time that I have with you to talk for 20 minutes. I thought when Tilakshi invited me to talk on something that would be relevant to the audience, what came to my mind was on being a humane person, and particularly on being a humane psychologist. Particularly because we know there's so much of upheaval that is happening in our country and in our world, and us being mental health professionals, how can humanity and our own humanity extend to our work in our profession and to the world? So let me share my slides with you. Is that visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Is visible? Can you see the door?
Yeah, yes. Can see.
Okay, so therefore the reason I really want to talk to you a little bit about is how can we as psychologists and potential psychologists be more human, so that we all, not only do we have a beautiful life, but how we can offer a beautiful life to those whom we serve. Now, if you look at humanity, psychology is the study of the human mind and the animal mind, as well as animal and human behavior. So when I was studying psychology in 1990s, we only considered humans, but now psychology has broadened its definition to include animals too. So humaneness is central to our work. Whether you're a clinical psychologist, a business psychologist, a forensic psychologist, a research psychologist, we work with humaneness. That is our central tenet towards humans and animals. In that context, there are three main human characteristics that we stand by, which are pillars in our I was going to say religion, but I suppose it is religion, which is our profession, which is empathy, feeling for other human beings, a non-judgmental attitude, and being authentic or congruent. We know that these three qualities from the School of Humanistic Psychology, which was exemplified to us by the renowned American psychologist called Carl Rogers. So whilst we emphasize on empathy, non-judgmental attitude, and congruence as hallmarks of humaneness in our profession, there are, of course, other qualities of humaneness too. Now, I looked at research that was done, if there was any research done, on humanness in psychologists or psychology graduates in Sri Lanka. And I didn't come across any. And in fact, there were very few studies even in the world. So that may be a potential research area that one of you all could look into. But humaneness is not only related to empathy, non-judgmental attitude, and congruence. There are all sorts of other humane qualities. Now, in that context, I'd like to share with you a rather large scale, I think one-of-a-kind research as of date that has been done amongst other undergraduate students in Sri Lanka, which was a research team was included myself, Professor Shamala Kumar, who's here today with you all, Dr. Santoshi Amarasuriya, and Navneet Mendes. So we were really interested. We didn't have psychology students or students from the humanities included in this study, but we did have students from medicine, from the sciences, the hardcore sciences, and management in a large sample of students. And we really wanted to explore their humaneness. We looked at several dimensions of humaneness. I'd like to talk to you about three of them because these are the published research that we have. We looked at authenticity, we looked at self-compassion, and we looked at altruistic joy. All of these you may understand is so central to our profession also. And in our study, we found that amongst these undergraduate students, their authenticity, which is also referred to as congruence in Carl Rogers' model of humanistic psychology, was comparable to undergraduates from other countries. And we found that Sri Lankan female university students were more authentic than male students. And if you like, you can look at this paper and understand why these findings may have come out like this. We also looked at self-compassion. You might wonder, well, how is self-compassion related to humaneness? It is very much related to humaneness, because you find that people who are not compassionate towards themselves have higher difficulties in being compassionate, being empathic, being non-judgmental towards others. We found that amongst our state university undergraduates, self-compassion was high. It was higher among men than in women. And there are certain cultural reasons for this gender difference. Then we also looked at altruistic joy, which is the opposite of envy or jealousy. Altruistic joy means being happy at somebody else's success. We found out that state university students, undergraduate students in Sri Lanka had similar or lower level of altruistic joy as compared to other students, other countries, students from other countries. In fact, so that was a bit of a concern. There seems to be more comparison and more envy towards others among Sri Lankans. But this particular envy was more benign, where they thought, well, you know, she or he is doing better than me. She or he is more popular than me. She or he is more good looking than me. So let me strive to be better. So their tendencies for envy was not malicious, but more benign. And we found that more men were envious than women, which is a contradictory finding from worldwide data, where women had higher tendency to be envious. So why I wanted to share this in this research conference at SLIT is that there is a lot of opportunities to study on various dimensions of psychology, particularly to do with psychologists themselves. Now, if you look at humaneness, you might wonder, well, what exactly is it? How do we know whether somebody is humane, etc.? We find that humaneness is something that flourishes from within us. And we usually see that as an individual grows through life, in chronological years, their humaneness usually flourishes. For many people, this flourishing is unwilled. It happens through life experiences. So, for example, maybe the parting of friends, the parting of intimate relationship, the passing away through death of somebody close to them, maybe failure at an exam, maybe losing a promotion. All of these life experiences, in an unwilled way, will develop somebody's humane qualities. So it's a gradual process. And if you can recall Erik Erikson's theory of personality development, we know that this entire process of our human life, if it is manured properly and directed properly, would lead to this flourishing of humaneness at the end of our life. Of course, humane development can also be willed, and that's why we have all sorts of psychotherapies, isn't it? If you look at the most prominent psychological interventions in this day and age, which is the cluster called the cluster C, or the third wave of cognitive behavioral therapy is called the mindfulness-based interventions, it's all about positive psychology and developing humaneness in an individual. So therefore, humaneness can be developed in an unwilled fashion, or it can be a willed fashion by applying certain psychological principles that is scientific and which we can apply on our own. Now, this humaneness is evident in an individual's personality. For example, in our own life, we know people who are more humane than others. And why do we say they are humane? It is because of the way they are, the way they conduct themselves, the way they speak to others, the way they think, the way they interact with other human beings. It's the way they live their life. Are they epitome of what they preach? Are they epitome of what their profession preaches? For example, is an individual who's a humane psychologist look into the needs of others who doesn't benefit them? Sometimes we do come across people in our own profession who may be somewhat more self-centered than what is warranted, where they're more concerned about their own promotion and welfare than another person. Another indicator of humaneness is the way an individual behaves towards those in different social stratas. So, for example, if you're an undergraduate in psychology, have you considered whether there's a difference in the way you might relate to the janitor or the security officer at the entrance of SLIT, as well as towards your lecturer or the senior lecturer or professor in your faculty? Why is there a difference? Is there a difference because there's a lack in humaneness in you? Have you considered that? Or are you plagued with ego? Are you a person who only wants to talk about themselves, promote themselves, interested in your own welfare and self-importance? Or are you a person who can be described as somebody who's very humble and who would associate with anybody who comes your way? Are you competitive or are you cooperative? So all of these things, the way you think, the way you speak, the way you behave, is an epitome of the extent of humaneness you are. It is ultimately shown by the warmth an individual exudes from themselves. You might yourself want to assess, well, how do people relate to me? Am I a popular person? Do people think you're a great human being? Do they come to you when they are in need? Are you like a little candle for other people's darkness? If so, you may be having the characteristics of humanness we are talking about today. Now, developing humanness can be done in a willed or unwilled fashion, as I said earlier. It can be willed if you can act on it in a willed way, that is, applying certain psychological principles into yourself, you're in a better wicket. There are so many different kinds of psychological interventions that we could use to develop our humanness and put on the fast track. We have no time to talk about everything today, but I want to talk to you about one particular intervention, which is, fast growing, and it's the most researched psychological intervention in the world now, which is the category we refer to as mindfulness-based intervention. This is a little diagram that refers to it. In this mindfulness intervention, a person is trained to drop emotions and thoughts which are not useful to them and which clutter their mind, and to live in a more simplistic manner in their mind. When you learn to live mindfully, you enjoy the moment and you develop certain characteristics within yourself. For example, a person who lives in the present moment or who is mindful is a person who pays attention to the current experience they are in. So, for example, you are connected with me today at the plenary talk at SICASH 2022. And are you with me wholeheartedly, or are you checking Facebook or LinkedIn or having a cup of tea and petting your dog in the process? If you're the second category, you're not mindful. So mindfulness is about bringing your mind back to the current experience, training your mind to be in the present. When an individual constantly and consistently over a long period of time trains their mind to be in the present moment by using various kinds of techniques and experiences, their ability to tolerate negative emotions of sadness or envy or anger or discontent or annoyance becomes so much more powerful. And when they are able to tolerate their negative emotions in a very fruitful way, the chances that these negative emotions will get transferred onto other human beings, whether it is your family member, your partner, your student, your client, becomes that much minimized. And when we are so much more in managing or controlling our mind to such a great extent, the individual develops self-compassion towards themselves. They think, well, 5 years down the line, I was a more angry, a more envious, a more sad, a more discontent person. But right now, in this phase of my life, I'm much more with it. And with that understanding towards oneself, the person develops compassion towards oneself, a quality of humanness. With self-compassion grows authenticity or congruence, one of the pillars of counseling psychology we refer to. It also develops patience in the person. When a human being or a potential psychologist or a psychologist develops these human qualities in oneself, Then the pillars of counseling psychology of empathy, non-judgmental attitude, and congruence has the opportunity to flourish from within the person as opposed to artificially inculcating it within oneself. Present moment awareness also helps one to disengage from unhealthy habits and behaviors such as, say, addiction, smoking, alcohol use, overspending, overshopping, etc. And finally, ensures the person accepts whatever atrocious present situation they are in, but also makes that individual motivated to take action to change their life. So finally, we find that nothing is more precious than being in the present moment, fully alive, fully aware. So I invite all of you who may be interested in developing your humans to think about and to practice present moment awareness as a way to be a better version of yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Pianjali Faiza, for your insightful and interesting speech on being a humane psychologist. Now, I would like to ask the audience to send any questions if you have via the chat line. There was a direct question in the chat line to me. That is, what are the tips to train the mind to be in the present situation?
The tips.
What are the tips to train the mind to be in the present situation?
Okay, so I believe the first thing is that one has to want to be in the present situation, and I think the person who answered is clearly interested in that. There is no many tips, it's just practicing. So on all your waking hours in a day, from the moment you get up from the bed and the moment you go back to sleep, just to keep your mind on the activity you're doing. So whether it's washing your dog or brushing your teeth or cutting brinjals for your lunch or studying or turning a page or texting somebody on WhatsApp, whatever activity you're doing, hook your mind onto the body, the activity of your body. Okay, because our mind has a tendency to go to three places. Either it will go to the past, to a future, or to a fantasy land. And that is mindlessness. So in order to strengthen the mind and bring out its highest human potential, you need to keep your mind here and now. And how do you do that? By hooking to the activity the body is doing. So for example, if I was to give an analogy, you all may be having a book rack at home, and on this book rack, we keep books. If there are no racks, the books will fall, isn't it? So likewise, the mind is like the book and the body is like the racks of the bookcase. So what we do is every time your mind wanders, so for example, say you are washing your dog And usually you think of the homework assignment you need to do, or the teledrama you're going to watch in the evening. Shall I have coffee or tea afterwards? Should I wash my hair or not? Should I, text back my friend who I was a bit cheesed off with? It's not with the dog washing process. A person who practices present moment awareness or mindfulness, on the other hand, would also get these thoughts or an intention to think things other than the dog washing, but instead, he or she will bring the mind back to the process of washing the dog. Every time the mind wanders, it wanders 7,222 times, they bring the mind back 7,222 times. So they train the mind to be here. And once the mind is sufficiently here, certain qualities of the person starts flourishing. That's how you do it.
Thanks, Professor. And there was another direct question to me in the chat line. That is, how do you teach children to be mindful during this era of multiple screens?
Era of?
Multiple screens.
You mean the online stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I think in the UK as well as in Singapore, they have mindfulness training programs at younger ages in many of the schools. And the reason is that research have indicated that even for children, this practice of mindfulness or present moment awareness is indicated. So that is there, that's established scientifically. So how do you teach? There are many ways. One is the parents themselves have to be role models of mindfulness. So for example, we can't insist that the child is mindful and being in the present if the parents are going around like a busy bee and like a bull in a china shop kind of a thing. So the parent or the adults, the child's life should be an epitome of mindfulness, being connected to the here and the now. Then secondly, there are little apps that could be used for adults and children, digital device apps that could be utilized to develop mindfulness. I think there's one thing called Mindspace, Head Start, various kinds of apps where at a random time, these apps bring out a little bell, like a Tibetan bowl bell kind of a thing, which reminds somebody whose mind may be out there to bring their mind back to the activity they're doing. So a person can utilize those techniques as well as teach the child. Children now have devices, right? Thirdly, you could directly ask the child when the child is, confused, the mind is wandering, the child is running here and there, to talk about being in the present, maybe in 3 activities in a day. You train the child, say, we don't have to be mindful throughout the day if you don't want to, but let's be mindful in your morning washing process in the washroom. In the afternoon, your eating lunch process. In the evening, again, the washroom process. Just train mindfulness on these 3 things. And as the child starts doing that, just in 3 activities in the day, and starts feeling the calm and the peace of it, it starts getting infused to other areas of his or her life. So there are 3 techniques, but there are many more too.
Thank you once again, Professor Piancheri, for your timely and wonderful topic on being a humane psychologist. I hope everyone in the audience really enjoyed it. Now, I would like to introduce our session chair, Professor Shamala Kumar. Professor Shamala Kumar is the head of the Department of Agricultural Economics and Business Management at University of Peradeniya. She is a well-published researcher and the